Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Sir Cypher here, and I'm gonna, after the next videos, they're gonna be some sort of more tutorial about multiplayer, but I decided I'd just show one of, a game I played recently on ladder. And I'm not the best player in the world, but um, I think it'd be interesting to, to show you what a game of Company of Heroes sort of looks like in multiplayer. And that might make you more interested in sort of the mechanics, because it's pretty fun. Like this game, I remember, was really intense, even though I'm not that good. So I'm playing as Americans, and he is playing as Wehrmacht, which are the two just normal factions in the original game. With my starting engineers, I build a barracks, which builds riflemen. He built, with his starting pioneers, he's building the Wehrmacht quarters, and he built a second unit of pioneers, which are like his version of engineers, so he could get it finished building a little bit faster. And like kind of the standard German opening, this is basically the standard German opening is you build the Wehrmacht quarters with your first engineers, or your first pioneers. You have the second one, you have the second group of pioneers help them finish building it, and then you build a heavy machine gun right off the bat. Because the idea is, if you can get your heavy machine gun to a good choke point on the map... Oh, actually he didn't build a heavy machine gun, he built Volksgrenadiers. I remember wrong. But the general thing is you get a heavy machine gun. And like, let's say if you can get your heavy machine gun in a good spot, like let's say here in the middle, this whole area is basically off limits to the enemy, because there's nothing the enemy's going to have at the beginning of the game that can get past the heavy machine gun, because you need vehicles or mortars or something, and Americans usually don't have access to that stuff early on. But anyway, he decided instead to build Volksgrenadiers, which are essentially pretty similar to the American riflemen. They're not quite as good, but they're not bad. And they're kind of like the placeholder infantry for the Germans until they get better units. You see here he's trying to put barbed wire here, but I notice him doing it and I stop him before he can get too far. So I have one squad of riflemen here. My engineers are off capping a point over there. Now, you see I make a mistake over here. I see these guys behind the wall, and I thought I could get behind this car and shoot at them, but 3 of my guys died on the way over there. And then a second unit of Volksgrenadiers comes up as well. So I'm forced to retreat, and these guys were originally going to come help, but I decide instead to go put them behind this wall to sort of cover this area. This whole time, his engineers are off capping points. These guys are fighting. They're both in pretty good cover. He's got pioneers building wire over here for some reason. My engineers are off capping points. And I'm building more riflemen, reinforcing riflemen. So he decides just to leave. I guess he didn't want to fight it out there. Now, this hasn't really come up in the game yet, but the American faction, your troops gain experience by fighting. The German faction, your troops gain experience by, you have to buy upgrades that give all of your units experience. So if your units fight, they don't get improved. You have to actually buy their upgrades. And it's supposed to represent that the starting German forces at the beginning of a game are going to be essentially like reserves and, the equivalent of like our National Guard. And the upgrades are your requisitioning elite troops that were on the Eastern Front fighting with Russia. Whereas the American troops, they start off, they're basically not veteran because they haven't fought yet. And they get better by fighting more because right now they're all unexperienced. So I kind of come through here again, but now he has a heavy machine gun and 1,000 Volksgrenadiers. So I'm not going to be able to get through it. But at the same time, I'm kind of pushing down in this direction. And I know I can't really get in here. And kind of a point a Company of Heroes multiplayer to remember is that if you figure out, like once I found out he had this machine gun here, I knew I couldn't get in here. If you are pretty sure you don't have a way of getting through an area or like assaulting a strong point, just don't even try. Because you're just gonna lose money and manpower and stuff. And it's best to just focus on other areas, like I came over here, down here, rather than try and force your way through a strong point. And actually, that's a lot of times how German Wehrmacht and British players, which you haven't seen the British faction, but that's how they win games. That's how I win games, at least. Is I set up a strong point, and the enemy is just like so angry that there's this like strong point, and they just like have to get rid of it. So they just throw people at it constantly, and just die. And you know, eventually I have so much more money than them because they spent all their money on dead troops, essentially. So I'm keeping on capping points. He's fighting out with me here for some reason. One thing he does do, which I don't think he does yet, but he built this bunker here, which oh, and he built the sniper, which I don't. Unlike the Germans, all of their units kind of come out of the same building. So the same building this building over here builds Volksgrenadiers and heavy machine guns and snipers. But the Americans, the only unit they can build out of the barracks is riflemen and jeeps. So I mean, jeeps are good against snipers, but if I wanted to build a sniper, I have to build a separate building. That's not like in the tech tree. So I normally don't build it. So I don't have a counter sniper to deal with this sniper. But again, like I said, I'm just not worrying about it. I'm coming over here and capturing all these points. Now, just sort of as a breakdown, because you're going to see how this kind of affects the game, I'm getting 42 fuel a second because I have these fuel points all over here, and he's only getting 10 fuel a second. So I'm getting 4 times as much fuel as he is, which is the resource you use for teching up, for getting upgrades and vehicles and all that sort of stuff. So because I have such a big advantage in fuel, I decided to upgrade my riflemen with BARs, which is, it's an upgrade you get that it gives 2 riflemen in every squad a BAR, which is kind of like a light machine gun. It makes them a lot more effective against infantry. But it costs 60 fuel, so, you know. That's 60 fuel that you could have been spending on, like, let's say building a motor pool, so you could get half tracks or AT guns or something. But I get BARs. You can see some of the guys have these BARs now. And one thing I do pretty poorly at this point is I don't build any more riflemen, and I have plenty of money. And if I had built another 5 or 6 squads of riflemen, this game probably would have been a lot easier for me. So I try and crawl through here. I thought the machine gun was back here, but he moved it. He moved it up here, so these guys get pinned. And that's something to remember when you're using heavy machine guns, is once the enemy sees it, you should probably move it, even if it's only a little bit. Unless it's in like a really good spot, you want to move it, because then when the enemy tries to go attack where they thought it was, they're going to get pinned by the machine gun. So he has this bunker here, and he turned it into a medic bunker. And medic bunkers, what they do is that when units get killed in Company of Heroes, they normally don't actually get killed. They're like wounded. See, this is the guy from my... Well, now he's dead, but no, he's not. This is the guy from my... Oh, now he's dead. This was a guy who got gunned down by the machine gun in my rifleman squad. And if you're within range of certain buildings, like for example a medic bunker, medics will run out and grab the wounded guy and bring him back to the bunker. And if the medic brings back enough dudes, you get a free squad of infantry. So like I said, see, I was coming behind here. I thought his machine gunner was in the middle of the road, but he had moved into this bunker. So again, I got screwed. I got, you know, suppressed almost instantly because he moved his machine gunner. How many kills does the sniper have? 5 kills. So you notice, you see this automatic fire coming from my BARs. One thing I don't think I've even mentioned yet, though, is that you don't have to kill the other player to win in multiplayer and Company of Heroes. There's also victory points, which are, you see these 500 and these 429. These big star things are strategic points. My flank is machine gunner here because he didn't move it. So I think hopefully my last guy. See, one of my guys with a BAR died and he dropped it, and so I think the enemy's gonna actually pick that up. But if you own more victory points than your enemy, I actually have all 3 here because I don't think my opponent's really paying attention to them. If you have all 3 victory, if you have more victory points than your opponent, their little ticker counts down. If it gets to 0, you win. And that's to prevent like people from just sitting in their base and turtling and just being axes. Because as you can probably tell, if the enemy just fills their base with like machine gunners and snipers and anti-tank guns and mines and stuff, it'd be like just the biggest pain in the ass to get into their base. So if they just sit in there, that's fine. If you hold all these victory points, see, he took my BAR. If you take all the victory points, then, or even 2 out of 3, you're gonna just win eventually. The thing is, though, is in 1v1, a lot of the times it doesn't make that big of a difference, because if you can capture all 3 victory points, you're winning anyway. But in this case, I've kind of made a point to capture even the ones in enemy territory, because if it goes on long enough, and the opponent's not paying attention, I'll just win. Again, I have a ridiculous amount of manpower, which I should have been using to build more riflemen, but I chose not to. But I am building a tank depot right now, which is going to allow me to get tanks. For some reason, well, not for some reason, because I had such a huge fuel advantage for most of the game, now I think he has a fuel advantage. Now we have the same fuel. But because I have such a big fuel advantage, I'm able to tech up a lot faster than him. This is like basically the highest American tier is the tank depot. This is where your best units come out of. He's only on tier 2. So he has 2 more tiers to go through before he gets to his like heavy tanks and stuff.
Seizing territory from us.
I don't really know that at the time because you don't really know how much money your opponent's making, but another interesting thing is that I actually kind of skipped a tier. Normally what you do is you build your barracks. This is just a building that heals all the units around it. You'll notice a lot of times in the campaign I'll have a unit that's full strength, but its health bar is at like a 2/3 or something because individual guys are wounded. All this does is it just heals everybody around it, so when people come back to get reinforced, all the wounded guys get healed. Normally you go to build the barracks, then you build a supply yard, which doesn't actually give you any doesn't allow you to build any units, but it makes your upkeep slower for the units you have, and it unlocks the next tier. And you can either choose to build a motor pool, which gives you AT guns, armored cars, and half tracks, or you can build the tank depot. I almost always build the tank depot because how should I put it? I don't really like armored cars or half tracks or AT guns. And it causes some problems sometimes, but it's just mine. I like to just go straight for the tank depot. Now this isn't actually it is a tank, but it's actually a tank destroyer, so it's not super effective against infantry, but it is still invulnerable to small arms fire like all other tanks. Actually, historically this tank, I'm fighting these guys out over here. Historically this tank had really light armor, the Hellcat. I also call down some airborne here, but I calmed down in a bad spot. The enemy actually kind of thought ahead, and they actually have a stealth anti-tank gun here in the middle of the road. But because of its angle, it can't shoot past this building. I'm not aware it's there yet, though. So I have to retreat my airborne, because they're getting sniped and machine gunned and all that. He actually has 2 snipers, I just noticed. So I roll my thing in there, I blast one of the snipers, and then I go, oh crap, I gotta back off. The reason I built a tank destroyer instead of an actual tank is that the tank destroyer is much, much less inexpensive than the tank is. The tank costs 90 fuel and like 400 something manpower. The tank destroyer only costs 50 fuel. So it's almost half the cost in fuel. And even though it's not quite as effective against infantry and it doesn't have nearly as much armor, it's still fairly well protected against small arms fire, which is what I needed. I needed something that could just drive up there and blast machine guns. You can see I took this sort of like momentary respite I got from him having to have all his guys retreat to run around and cap all these points. You notice this guy seems to just have oodles of infantry everywhere right now, and that's because of this medic bunker. Every time some guy gets wounded, the medic bunker just goes and picks him up. So it's basically like whenever I kill a guy, it doesn't really die. See, you can technically kill the medics, but I feel bad, so I don't really normally just let them go. So you can see is that there's a little bar on there, and when the bar fills up, you get another free unit. So I have all my guys over here. Oh, change colors.
Veterancy gained.
See, and a free unit came out because of the guy brought a bunker back. I mean, the medic brought back a corpse. So I'm calling down more airborne, capping all these points. I can't go over here because he has a machine gunner there. But I had my engineers run over here and repair this tank that had gotten shot at by that AT gun. And these guys aren't doing too well. Hopefully he gets out of there. Okay. So the engineers repaired this tank, and I'm going to have him take out this machine gunner because he's kind of being aggravating.
Sir.
With that gone, I could have my airborne come in here and try and clean up this mess. For some reason I didn't have them shoot, I had them just run in there, but you know, whatever. There's this sniper here, which is like my eternal annoyance in this map.
Losing ground out there.
So I still don't build any more rifles, but now I have 2 squads of airborne, so I'm doing okay. And then I also build a Sherman now, and I also get the upgrade. See, the American faction, how they operate is their units kind of start off bad, not bad, but they start off like, you know, okay, and then you get upgrades to make the units better.
They have 200 fuel points.
Whereas the Germans, they just get better units. So it's not like they get some sort of upgrade to make like their tanks, their crappy tanks better. They just get better tanks. The Americans, like Shermans for example, they start with a pretty crappy gun. It's a 75mm gun, but you can get an upgrade from the tank depot that gives them the 76mm gun. This just popped out there.
Enemy unit down.
So now I'm just kind of shooting them up. Got a tank over here, airborne over here, and the guy, he saw my Sherman because it blasted a bunch of his dudes, and he said no point. Which, I'm not necessarily sure, that might have been a little bit grim, but, yeah, things were looking kind of bad for him, because he didn't have any building yet that could give him tanks. He had AT guns, but AT guns aren't really a good defense against tanks, because they only really protect where they're at. So I think he saw the victory point ticker. He knew I was going to take back the middle. And he decided that he was going to quit. But I think he still had a pretty good chance. Well, anyway, I hope you thought that this was an interesting game, and it was pretty intense for me when I was playing it. Because, like I said, I'm not that good at Company of Heroes. And the next multiplayer videos I'm going to show are going to be more like tutorial overviews of the different factions. But like I said, I wanted to show this first so you kind of get an idea of what a normal ladder match of Company of Heroes looks like. All right, thank you and have a nice day.